Today, I want to speak to something very personal. And let me begin with something honest. I know that some of you, friends, family, people who have known me and loved me and walked with me throughout my journey and the seasons of my life, may not fully understand the way I teach, the language I use, the framework I draw from, the roads I have traveled to arrive at what I am pointing toward. And I want you to know that I understand. I know that every concern has been raised out of love. And I accept that love, and I am privileged for your love. And so I want to speak to it directly because I think it matters not just for understanding me, but for something much larger than me. This is a space of remembrance, a place where you are invited to slow down, to breathe, and to return to the truth of who you are. Francisca Inspires exists to support awakening, not by becoming something new, but by remembering what has always been within you. Here, we explore self-love, inner peace, and conscious living. We speak of sovereignty, coherence, and the divine blueprint that lives within every being. This is a space for reflection, healing, and expansion for those who feel called to live with intention, to embody truth, and to walk their path with clarity and grace. You are welcome here, exactly as you are. Francisca Inspires. Remember, restore, and radiate. For most of us, we have been raised inside of systems that did something very human and very understandable, and also in their unexamined form, very limiting. We drew lines around God. We looked at the vastness of the eternal, the intelligence that spoke galaxies into being, that encoded consciousness into matter, that breathed life into the first living thing and has sustained every living thing since. And we said, this far, no further. We built boxes of doctrine and denomination and tradition and tribal identity, and we placed God inside them. And then this is where it became costly. We began to say that anyone who did not stand inside our particular box was standing outside of God. Religion, in many of its institutional expressions, has been extraordinarily effective at one thing that was never part of the original divine intention: separation. The construction of walls between people who at the deepest level of their being are made of the same eternal substance, breathe the same sacred air, and hail from the same source. But here is what I have come to know, not as theology, but as lived experience, as something I have touched and been touched by in the most honest and interior moments of my life. The ultimate aim of the Eternal One is not separation. It is unity, oneness, God, source, the living intelligence, the Eternal One, the I Am, is not the author of divisions we have constructed in His name. The divine intention from the very beginning has been that humanity would know itself as one, that we would recognize each other across every difference of culture and tradition and language and expression as family, as expressions of the same eternal love, taking different forms on the same sacred journey home. God God is too vast, too magnificent, too gloriously beyond all our categories to be contained in any single tradition's vocabulary. The eternal does not belong to one group of people. I know that this may trigger some people, but it is not my intention to. But I repeat, the eternal does not belong to one group of people, does not endorse one box over another, does not love in the narrow conditional us versus them way that religion has sometimes tried to make it resemble. God is grand. God transcends. There is no part of this universe, no soul on this earth, no experience of any living being that is outside of the hands and of the heart of the Eternal One. And so when you hear language from me that is unfamiliar, when you hear words drawn from traditions that are not the one you grew up in, when the framework I use does not match the framework you were given, I ask you simply and lovingly not to hear distance in that. I ask you to listen for the thing beneath the words. Listen and discern the spirit of the word. Let the Spirit speak to you through them. Discern the spirit of the word before you begin to judge or make conclusions. And take what resonates and leave what does not. Because what I am pointing toward in every language I borrow and every tradition I draw from is the same living reality that the best of all traditions have always been pointing toward too. We are all drinking from the same river. We have simply approached it from different banks. And I pray that the Spirit will help us understand the heart and the intent of God for all humanity. Now let me speak to something more personal. Something that I think will help you understand not just what I teach, but why. When most people hear the word awakening, inner transformation, regeneration, renewing of the mind by the Spirit, spiritual maturation, whichever word resonates with you, particular image comes to mind. The dramatic encounter, the blind vision, the audible voice, the angelic visitation, the overwhelming spiritual experience that leaves no room for doubt and transforms everything in an instant. And yes, those experiences are beautiful and I honor them fully. But they are not the only way the soul wakes up. And this is the part that concerns me deeply, because I believe there are countless beautiful souls, perhaps you are one of them, who are in the midst of a genuine, profound, sacred awakening right now, and they have no idea, because what is happening in them does not look like what they were told awakening was supposed to look like. It doesn't announce itself with thunder. It comes quietly, in subtle shifts, in small but unmistakable changes in how they see, how they feel, what they want, what no longer fits, what is beginning slowly, tenderly, without drama to feel like home. And because nobody gave them language for these subtle things, they either dismiss them entirely, or worse, they misinterpret them as something going wrong. I know this territory intimately, not only as a teacher, but as someone who lived it. Growing up in a deeply Christian context, a context I love and from which I receive genuine gifts that I carry to this day. I began having experiences that I had absolutely no framework for. In my quietest moments, in the deep intimacy of prayer and communion with the Holy Spirit, I would feel things I couldn't explain. A sensation of falling inward, as though the boundaries between my body and the space around it were softening. As though I was sinking gently and weightlessly into something larger than myself. Waves of energy moving through the body in the most profound moments of genuine spiritual contact. Experiences that I can only describe as a deep internal bliss. The kind that begins at the center of the being and radiates outward through every cell. I didn't have language for any of it. I didn't know at that time that the body, the human body, is not merely biological machinery, but a living energy system that we carry within us, energy centers, points of consciousness woven into the body's architecture that begin to activate and open as the soul remembers its divine origin. I didn't know that what I was experiencing in those moments was the body coming alive to the presence of the Eternal One in a way that is physical as well as spiritual. Because as I have come to understand, the spiritual and the physical were never separate to begin with. The body is sacred. The body is a receiver. The body is designed to know God. But no one taught me that. So I sat with experiences that I couldn't decode, unable to lean into them fully, unable to breathe into them and anchor in them and receive everything they were offering, because I simply didn't know what was happening. And I think of how different that could have been, how much fuller those encounters might have been if I had understood, if someone had said, what you are feeling is real, it is holy, it is the life of the Spirit moving through the instrument of your body, and you can trust it. There is something else I want to name, because I know that I am not alone in this, and I know it has caused genuine distress for many people. There were times in my life when I would feel things in my body that I didn't understand, a tightness in the chest that seemed to arrive from nowhere, a feeling of something lodged in the throat, a restlessness or unease in the body that I couldn't trace to any physical cause, a sensitivity in the skin, an inner stirring that sat right at the edge of discomfort. And every time, the only framework I had been given said that something is wrong, that something in the realm of the spirit is happening against you, an attack, an enemy, an impending doom or darkness. And so I would quickly shift into a posture of warfare, praying from a place of fear, battling against something I couldn't name, projecting the body's communication outward onto something threatening, a threatening spiritual landscape. And here is the thing, fear as a prayer posture amplifies fear. It takes a signal that the body was offering as information and treated as a declaration of war. The system, already activated, spirals deeper into distress rather than finding its way into stillness. What I didn't know, what nobody taught me, was that many of those sensations were not attacks. They were invitations. The tightness in the chest was sometimes grief that needed to move. The constriction in the throat was sometimes a truth that had been swallowed for too long. The restlessness was sometimes the soul pressing against a life that had grown too small for it. The unease was sometimes the body's intelligence saying, something here is out of alignment and I am showing you where. The body is not the enemy of the spirit. The body is not carnal in the dismissive, distrusting sense we were sometimes taught. The body is the vessel of the spirit, the sacred, intricate, extraordinarily intelligent biological instrument through which the eternal soul experiences and expresses life in physical form, and it communicates constantly with precision in the language of sensation and feeling, and that particular quality of inner knowing that lives somewhere below the thinking mind. We were taught not to trust it. We were taught to wait for an external voice, an external vision, an external confirmation, because somehow the divine was out there beyond us, requiring specialized access, speaking only through particular channels to particular people. But dear beloved, the kingdom, as Yeshua said, is within. The living voice of the Spirit speaks through the body, through the heart, through the quiet intelligence of the soul's own knowing. And when we learn to listen, really listen, with a kind of patient, curious, non-fearful attention that the body's language deserves, we discover that we have been carrying a guidance system of extraordinary refinement our entire lives. We simply were not taught to read it. This is why I approach awakening the way I do. Not to be different, not to be controversial, not to distance myself from the traditions that shaped me, but because I remember what it felt like to be in the middle of something sacred and have no language for it. I remember the confusion. I remember the fear that was added unnecessarily to what should have been a beautiful encounter with my own becoming. And I know there are people listening right now who are in that exact same place. You are feeling things you don't have words for. Your life is shifting in ways that don't fit the framework you were given. Something in you is changing. In the quiet, in the subtle, in the small daily details that nobody else would even notice. And you don't know whether to call it awakening or confusion or crisis or grace. I want to tell you, you are not going crazy. You are not under attack. And you are not drifting from God. You are not losing your mind or your faith or your way. You are waking up. And the particular beauty of your awakening is that it is happening in the precise way that is designed for you. Not in someone else's dramatic encounter that you read about in a book, but in the intimate, specific, irreplaceable language that a spirit uses to speak to you through your body, through your emotions, through the subtle shifts in your perception and your desire, and the things that suddenly feel too small to live inside anymore. This is not confusion, it is navigation. And my deepest hope in everything I teach is that the language I offer will give you enough of a map that you stop being afraid of the territory you are moving through and start receiving it for what it actually is. The most extraordinary, most sacred, most profoundly personal journey a human soul can take. The journey home to itself. to the eternal that lives within it, to the truth that was always there, waiting patiently beneath all the noise and all the fear and all the boxes we were handed and told were the whole of God. To my friends and family, my beloveds, who look at what I teach and wonder where I have gone. I have not gone anywhere that the Spirit has not led me. I have followed the living intelligence into wider and wider rooms. And I have found, to my continual wonder and gratitude, that every room contains the same light, called by different names, expressed in different vocabularies, but the same light. I have not left God. I have found God to be larger than I was told, more present, more intimate, more woven into the fabric of ordinary experience than the extraordinary visions and the dramatic encounters would suggest. God is in the subtle shift. God is in the body's quiet signal. God is in the small interior change that nobody else notices. God is in the unease that is really an invitation, in the restlessness that is really a calling, in the staring that is really the soul beginning to remember what it has always known. That is what I teach. And I teach it because I believe with everything I am that there is someone out there who needs exactly this language to finally understand what is happening to them, to finally exhale, to finally say, I am not broken. I am not losing my way. I am waking up. And all is well. All has always been well. And all shall be well. With love, with humility, with profound gratitude for every tradition that has carried the light. To God be the glory. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for showing up, not because you had it all together, but exactly as you are. If this episode touched something in you, share it with someone you love. Leave a review on our website or a comment if you feel moved to, and I will see you in the next episode where we will go deeper into navigating higher waters. Until then, come home to yourself as often as you can. It's always worth it. As you return to your day, go gently. Stay with what feels true. And remember, you are already enough. Until we meet again, remember, restore, radiates.